When we first started covering the Trayvon Martin-George Zimmerman trial a few weeks ago, the information that I was given from inside the judge's office in Sanford, Florida, was that what's going to happen from this case is that they're going to revisit the stand your ground law in Florida. So essentially they're going to redefine self-defense in terms of what's legal and what's not legal. And according to this judge in Florida, it looks like it's going to go the direction of stand your ground first was the previous incarnation of the law. Now it's going to be retreat first and then stand your ground. So this has big implications if it's adopted nationwide. And what's really going to sprout out of the trial of George Zimmerman is going to be just that. And I think the conversation is going to move quickly over to gun control and restricting the use of firearms in the United States. And, you know, the Obama administration has made no secret about its plans to do just that in the second term. So I think it's not something that Obama can do without really throwing a spark into a powder keg before the election in November. But certainly, if Obama is reelected in November, you're looking at anything goes with a lame duck president who is probably on record, and according to history, the most liberal, most socialist president the United States has had since FDR. But the other thing that's going to happen is, look, America has a very, very short attention span for current events. So as far as George Zimmerman goes, right now, Trayvon Martin, and it's very unfortunate that here you have a young man whose life was cut short by this crime or by this incident. It's not even determined what level of a crime it is yet, because it still has to go through trial. But America has a very short attention span, and pretty soon, the longer this trial drags on, what I said a month ago, and I still stand by that, you're going to see a shift happen. And now it's not going to be Trayvon Martin who's the victim. The longer you see George Zimmerman being paraded around the national media with shackles around his waist, being dragged into court in a suit and tie, in full chains, he's going to be the victim. The media will then it's media fatigue America has. They can only run on a narrative for a limited period of time. Once the media fatigue sets in, they have to change the narrative, because that's what the media does. And the narrative is going to be, here you have George Zimmerman, a Hispanic American guy who's very dark-skinned, and he'll be the victim now. And that is what's going to happen in this situation. And then once the media is finished feeding on the victimization of George Zimmerman, they're going to move on to guns. And I think that's going to be a massive talking point. Already, we had an announcement from Eric Holder from the Department of Justice that he had his FBI team down in Sanford, Florida, compiling evidence, analyzing evidence, looking at evidence, because they want to see if there's a federal trial to be had here in terms of a racially motivated incident. So the FBI can't get involved on a normal assault or a normal murder. It's only interstate crime, interstate trafficking, kidnapping, and unfortunately the federal government can get their claws in on anything that's racially motivated or hate crimes. So that's something that we're going to see. Possibly this George Zimmerman trial may never get off the ground, and then the Department of Justice will come and Eric Holder will attempt possibly to grandstand and make a racial issue. And we've seen this time and time again with this administration and the charlatans that orbit around the administration. I'm talking about Al Sharpton. I'm talking about Jesse Jackson. These are what I call political opportunists. They see a situation, they see a crisis, they do not want to let a crisis go to waste. In the words of Rahm Emanuel, former White House chief advisor to the president, we do not let a crisis go to waste. And certainly that's going to play itself out in this Trayvon Martin-George Zimmerman drama, okay? So here we have the best aspects of the handbook for Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinski. And what Saul Alinski was brilliant at was being able to infiltrate different aspects of society, infiltrate communities, and then from there you can steer and you can agitate factions against each other. So right now in America we're seeing a new race war, which is totally artificial, which is really riding off the juggernaut of the Trayvon Martin shooting, which should be nothing more than a local, a county, or a state matter in Florida, has become a national issue. And it's absolutely incredible to see the media circus that's absolutely, flowing in and out and through every aspect of this case. Now, a new race war in America? America has come such a long way in 300 years in terms of racial integration, in terms of this is still one of the most tolerant societies from a religious standpoint, and also from a racial standpoint. Make no mistake, America's own history, its own jaded history in terms of race, I'm talking about slavery in the 18th and 19th centuries, that history almost determines that there's going to be some aspects that are dysfunctional in healing racial wounds and tensions and so forth. But you can't argue that it's gotten absolutely 300, 400, 500, 1,000% better since Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation at the end of the Civil War. But here again, you have the Saul Alinski radicals, the Al Sharptons of the world, and Barack Obama, certainly I'll put in that category. Some of the comments he made have been absolutely inflammatory. For a president of the United States to comment on an ongoing trial is unprecedented. He was asked, what do you think about this case in Florida? And he said, if I had a son, he looked like Trayvon Martin. Okay? That is really, I can't even, words can't describe the disappointment when I heard the President of the United States weighing in on a very touchy and potentially racially explosive event. On its face, it's not a racial event. George Zimmerman's also a minority. So where the black, white, or the racial profiling talking point came from, I still can't figure out. This is one of the big mysteries of this whole phenomenon. Where did this talking point come from? I have no idea. It's not, George Zimmerman's not a white guy. So it's a manufactured event. And I think from the beginning to the end, you can see that it's been stage managed by the mainstream media, the worst of which is NBC, who was caught doctoring the 911 calls that George Zimmerman made to the police. I mean, when you have a major U.S. network who is that involved in trying to spin the outcome of a major controversial event, that they will doctor and edit 911 tapes, creating the worst kind of confusion in finding out exactly what happened in this event, is unbelievable. If it was a smaller network, or if it was Infowars.com who did that, or if it was someone else who had a broadcasting license, their broadcasting license would be gone. They'd pull it straight away. Why is NBC? They should be dragged into court. They should have their broadcast license removed. That's one of the worst crimes in the world of journalism that I've ever heard of or seen of. But here you have it. They get off scot-free, and and they just carry on like business as usual. So it's absolutely incredible. And I think one day Americans they absolutely devour stories like this. And I think what you'll find in the mainstream media in America and in society, every 6 months there's what I call a freak. It's a freak case, or it's a circus case, something that the media can buzz around and create a kind of whirlwind of content that'll just dominate every channel of the television, every minute on the radio, every column in the newspaper for weeks or months on end. We saw that with the O.J. Simpson trial. I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that O.J. Simpson was a Football Hall of Fame running back and a film star, that wouldn't have made the news. But there it was. It dominated the national conversation. What's important for Americans, the ones who have their brains actually switched on, is while this circus is going on, while the media and while all your friends and your work colleagues are all watching watching that sort of horse go over there. That's the O.J. Simpson trial lot. Watch it. There it goes. It's jumped the fence. It's come around. It's coming back again. There it's ran off again up the hill, and it's back again. While you're watching this O.J. Simpson horse, there's a whole lot of stuff going on over here on the other side, off camera. Okay, and I think that's the timing of these freak stories, or these murders, or these cases, which are, you know, really disturbing, and they are important, you know, as an individual event, but should they be dominating? Should local issues that are really for the local news, for the local community, where those crimes or those acts of violence happen, should they be for the local communities themselves? Do they need to be dominating the national news? Does a murder in a trailer park in southeast Texas, is that really relevant to my day-to-day life in California or Massachusetts or New York? No, it's not. You know, I've got my own local crime issues that I'm concerned with in my own community. I don't need to have that blasted on CNN, on Fox, on MSNBC, CBS, ABC, 60 Minutes, 2020. I don't want Geraldo Rivera running around trying to scoop the story for weeks on end. So they're not really important, and it's a distraction. And it's one of the biggest crimes in America is, I think, that people they really love the distraction. They absolutely love it. They eat it up, and they'll clean their plate with these stories and ask for another serving, you know, in the next month or 6 months later. Meanwhile, there's wars being ramped up in places like Iran. The U.S. are involved in a proxy war, a guerrilla war in Syria that is much worse and no different than the Iran-Contra scandal and the proxy wars that the U.S. was funding in Nicaragua and El Salvador and Guatemala back in the 80s. A real dark point in Western Hemisphere history. That's all being repeated again, and it's almost seemed like it's all okay. You know, the State Department talks about getting involved in more wars and maybe some more drone attacks in Pakistan, killing more civilians, arming the rebels in Syria, also getting involved in surrounding the Iranian regime and teaming up with Israel on a preemptive strike against a nuclear program that may or may not exist. According to the CIA's own reports, they don't have those nuclear capabilities in terms of military or interballistic missiles. So there is no crisis there. But anyway, aircraft carriers, the U.S. Navy's being deployed. We've got bases off the islands in Oman, right in the Persian Gulf. We've got something like 15,000 to 20,000 troops stationed there. That's not talked about in the media. We've also got our bases in Iraq. We've got our bases in Afghanistan. We've got all these things happening. And America should be concerned about that, because that will affect us. It will affect our economy. It will affect the global distribution and price of petroleum, which is going to affect the price of every good and service in this country. In a time of recession, we can hardly afford another hike in fuel prices and the price of goods and services and food. Americans are really on the edge, especially the working classes and the middle classes as it is. So can we afford that? No. And hence we cannot afford to be distracted by those ridiculous stories that shouldn't be national media stories that are running for 2 weeks or a month. Okay, they're small interest stories, but our heroes, our journalistic heroes, all these graduates of Columbia University and the various vaunted schools of journalism, Syracuse University around the country, etc., all these great grads who are working for CNN and who gave their left arm for an internship out of university and now have worked their way up the ranks, they all march to the beat of the same drum, okay, and they all take the same ridiculous interest in these distraction stories, freak stories. Meanwhile, the world is slowly smoldering in flames, and America is feeling it at home, and will feel it more as time goes by. But You know, at some point we just got to really wake up. People get out of our little fantasy worlds, get out of our little plasma screen box when we turn it on, think outside.